Free speech is under attack. That's the headline today as the House passes H.R. 6090, a bill that is used and is being proclaimed to address anti-Semitism in America. So we're going to dive in this podcast into what the bill says, what people are freaking out about in regards to free speech. Then we'll jump into my opinion of it, and once in office, or if I was in office, how I would have voted on this bill. So without further delay, we got a lot to cover, so let's just jump right into it. So I have the bill pulled up right here, HR 6090. And this is very important. I find it very important for us to actually go through and read these bills. It's actually a little bit of a lengthy bill. There's 8 pages to it, so I'm not going to read the whole thing. You should definitely read it for yourself. I'll put a link below. But it's so fascinating to me how much we hear from the mainstream media about, it's not really even mainstream, let's call it corporate owned, how much we hear from the corporate owned media and how much the bills actually differ from what they're talking about. So here we go. HR 6090, an act to provide for the consideration of a definition of anti-Semitism set forth by the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance for the enforcement of federal anti-discrimination laws concerning education programs or activities and for other purposes. If we scroll down here a little bit for it, the short title of it, this act may be cited as the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act of 2023. Section 2, the sense of Congress. It is in the sense of Congress that 1. Title 5 of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, and national origin in programs and activities receiving federal financial assistance. 2. While such title does not cover discrimination solely based on religion, individuals who face discrimination based on actual or perceived shared ancestry or ethnic characteristics do not lose protection under such title for also being members of a group that share a common religion. 3. Discrimination against Jews may give rise to a violation of such title when the discrimination is based on race, color, or national origin, which can include discrimination based on actual or perceived shared ancestry or ethnic characteristics. And then it goes on to say about how it's the policy of the United States to protect these people. Broad strokes, completely agree. This all makes sense to me. Here's where it gets interesting, and I think we need to actually focus. Section 3, the findings. Congress finds the following. Number 1, anti-Semitism is on the rise in the United States and is impacting Jewish students in K-12 schools, colleges, and universities. Number 2, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, referred to in this act as the IHRA, has a working definition of anti-Semitism, and this is a vital tool which helps individuals understand and identify various manifestations of anti-Semitism. Now, let me see if I can find the next point of this. I feel like I made a note. Okay. Those are, I think, what's important in this bill. There's more important stuff. Again, I'm going to link it below if you want to go and read through the whole thing. Highly recommend it, because if there's something I miss, feel free to shoot me a message on Instagram at Clayton, on X, wherever you connect with me, on YouTube. Leave a comment below. But here's what most people are focusing on, or at least from what I can gather, because I've read through this bill and people are freaking out about freedom of speech. They're saying that freedom of speech is under attack with this bill, that we are at risk of losing our First Amendment right, which I am all in support of, 100% in support. There's probably edge cases where you can't yell bomb in a movie theater or fire in a movie theater or bomb in an airport. And, I think we can generally agree that those make sense. But now let's dive into this, though. So the main focus of people is around the very first area, my sense is, which is Section 2, subsection 1, where it says that the Civil Rights Act prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, and national origin in programs and activities receiving federal financial assistance. And the way that it seems to me people are interpreting this is that anyone who receives foreign aid, anyone who we give aid to as a government, becomes protected against discrimination. When what this is saying is that programs or activities receiving financial aid or assistance cannot be discriminatory within it. So if there's a university, and this is why the universities are going and bending over backwards to prevent hate speech, which is protected under the First Amendment. Protecting hate speech is because of the Civil Rights Act, Title V of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, because they are receiving federal funding. So by them receiving federal funding, they cannot prohibit, the act prohibits them from discrimination based on race, color, and national origin. Which again makes sense until you realize that they're using this as a weapon. And where this gets more weaponized is if we scroll down to the findings. Let me see where it's at. We talked about this briefly. Section 3, the findings. This is the definition, right? And we've talked so much about the war on language. And here we are handing over our tools, our weapons in this war on language to an international entity. Section 3, subsection 2. Congress finds the following. Section 2. The International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, referred to in this act as the IHRA, working definition of anti-Semitism, is a vital tool which helps individuals understand and identify the various manifestations of anti-Semitism. So let's break this down. Who is the IHRA? Well, according to Wikipedia, which I understand might not be the best source in the entire world, but it gives us at least a working source, is their purpose is uniting governments and experts to strengthen, advance, and promote Holocaust education, remembrance, and research worldwide, and to uphold the commitments to the 2000 Stockholm Declaration. Now, anyone who has been paying the slightest attention to what's going on in the world, every single country is having the same exact issues. Why? Because every single country is buying into this globalist idea that we need to form a one world government. And right here, we have a bill in America showing that we are going to give the power of how we define anti-Semitism in a country that the definitions are going out of control, giving the power of how we define anti-Semitism to an international program that its purpose is to unite governments and experts. And again, let's be very clear here that I completely agree. Holocaust education, remembrance, and I don't know what research we really need to do at this point, but we definitely need to remember and educate people on the terrors, the evil that was perpetuated by Nazi Germany and Hitler. 100% we need to educate people on that. The question still stands, though, is why are we giving the power to this organization who, in the Wikipedia says, IHRA carries out internal projects and seeks to influence public policy making on Holocaust-related issues and develops research focusing on lesser-known aspects of the Holocaust. Okay, that's crazy to me, right? That is absolutely crazy to me that we have an international agency whose goal is to influence public policy. They should have absolutely no influence over the US federal government. And I just find that absolutely wild. I didn't even know they were a thing until I read this. Nobody's even talking about this section of it. So to me, this is all a part of the plan, the globalist plan in order to take over countries, if you will. And this perfectly aligns with it as we give them the ability to change the definition of anti-Semitism whenever they want, right? Because we're saying that, well, they have a working definition, so they can always update it whenever they wish. And for full transparency, if you will, here's what their current definition is. So on 26th of May 2016, they decided to adopt the following non-legally binding working definition of anti-Semitism. non-legally binding. So again, this definition can be changed. And that's and again, I think that's the most important thing here to focus on, is that they can change the definition whenever they wish. Once they have the power, they'll change it to whatever they want it to be. And it says, and I quote, "Anti-Semitism is a certain perception of Jews, which may be expressed as hatred towards Jews." But see, even that is crazy, right? Can we just break down that language right there? A certain perception of Jews. So if you, anti-Semitism is a certain perception of Jews. That's what they're defining it as. So if you have any sort of perception of Jews at all, you could be defined as anti-Semitic. Because then it goes on to say, which may be expressed as hatred. So even there, this is the working definition that we have just signed into office to be our cornerstone, if you will, of what makes something legal, illegal, XYZ. This is bonkers to me. Like, that's the first sentence. I'll read the rest of it for completeness. So it says, anti-Semitism is a certain perception of Jews which may be expressed as hatred towards Jews. Rhetorical and physical manifestations of anti-Semitism are directed towards Jewish or non-Jewish individuals and or their property, toward Jewish communities, institutions, and religious facilities. Or non-Jewish individuals? Let's hear that again. Rhetorical and physical manifestation of anti-Semitism are directed toward Jewish or non-Jewish individuals and or their property, towards Jewish community, institutions, and religious facilities. So now you don't even have to be Jewish. Do you see how this creates this air of confusion? And I feel like there's a lot of frustration that comes to people whenever we talk about these things of taking away our rights. And fair. But we have to look at it in terms of compassion as well. Because if we go down this path of constantly changing what it means to be racist or anti-Semitic, then when these things actually occur in society, we'll have no idea. We'll think that it's the boy who cried wolf. And there's a piece of me that feels that that might be the true intent of all of this. That the true intent is to dilute the idea of sexism, racism, anti-Semitism, to the point where we can't actually point a finger when those events are occurring. And to me, that's going to be even more devastating for minority communities in the world. Not only America. Let's be honest here. It's not only just America. It's the entire world who's going to suffer because of things like this. So, the person, let's get on to you guys' favorite part. I'm sure you might have figured it out by now how I would vote on this. And it's important to point out that the seat I'm contesting, the 17th District of PA, Chris Deluzio voted yes to this. So he's all in favor with this idea of handing over our free speech to international organizations, to defining language to international organizations. So Chris Deluzio voted yes on this bill. Now, what would Clayton vote? Well, maybe you picked it up in my speech, but I would be a very firm no on passing this. So right there, we have altered one vote. And where people will get dismayed, and I can already hear the voices in my head, of this vote passed 320 to 91. So Clayton, you're just one person. That wouldn't have made a difference on whether or not this would have get passed. And maybe not this bill. You're right, maybe not this bill. But what about the future? What about the future of standing up for what's right, trying to make a difference? Because if we keep having this mindset of, oh, well, I'm just one person or you're just one person, then we're always going to stay divided. And the divisiveness that has occurred in the corporate-run media and that has run between parties is out of control. We have to come together. And when I talk about divisiveness, I'm always reminded of that scene in Bug's Life. Whenever you have Hopper, the leader of the grasshoppers, and they're in kind of like this bar setting, and one of the grasshoppers is like, "Oh, it's just one puny ant standing up against us. What can he do?" And everyone's kind of laughing. And Hopper, they have this big jug of kind of like acorns that are kind of just like sitting there, like ready to fall. And they can open the lid, and one little, I don't know if it's an acorn, we'll call it an acorn. One acorn comes out, and Hopper throws it at the grasshopper, and he's like, "Did that hurt?" And he's like, "No." And he opens up again, and he says, "No," and everyone's having a good time. Hopper then kicks off the lid. The entire avalanche of acorns comes and falls and crushes this guy. Hopper jumps up on top of the avalanche with the crushed grasshopper underneath and says, "Is this is the problem? Is alone. They are completely fine. They won't hurt us." But once they realize they can band together, that's whenever we're in trouble. That's whenever they'll make a difference. And that's whenever our way of life, the elite's way of life, becomes threatened. Is when we realize that coming together is that option. And this is why I'm running for Congress. This is why we need more people to join the American Congress Party. This is why I need you to vote for me in November. Because together, we outnumber them almost several million to one. So let's come together and show them that, because it's far past time. And with all that being said, I appreciate you all. I love you all. And if I don't see you now, I know for sure I'll see you in the sixth dimension.